I'm Leeann Moe, and I'm the author of The Forgotten Sheriff. I started writing plays when I was 15, and I was very blessed to have a family that were also involved in drama. My sister Sharon started a company called Mozart Productions, which was to provide drama to homeschool students. She had a need for plays. That's where a lot of my plays were first performed, and so they were full productions. Most of my plays are full-length plays, and I've been blessed because every play that I've written has been performed, which is very unusual for a playwright. So I've written all sorts of different plays. I've written a Victorian play, a 50s and 60s play, a World War II play, and then a 1920s play. And it was the 1920s play that inspired me to write The Forgotten Sheriff. So I've had a lot of experience over the years. God has been very gracious in the opportunities that He's given me. A lot of different types of plays. I wrote a play called Stardust, and it was a musical. Because it was during the 20s, there's all the great silent movies from that era. And so we incorporated silent movies into the play. So I wrote a little bit of a silent movie, and I called it The Forgotten Sheriff. And the inspiration for the title is I was looking up all of these different silent movies, and I came across a poster. It was called The Street of Forgotten Men. And I just love that title because the idea of someone being forgotten is kind of mysterious, and you want to know why were they forgotten? And so I thought, I'll call this Western The Forgotten Sheriff. And it was about a sheriff who's tied to a cactus, and there's this girl who comes and rescues him, and he's being attacked. And in the end, he dies, so it's a tragedy. It was a couple of years later, we were going to do another play for a summer camp, and Sharon said, well, why don't you take The Forgotten Sheriff, and why don't you expand it? And so I did, but I had to figure out the whole plot, because I just had this little ending. So I had to figure out, okay, why is the sheriff forgotten? What did he do? And I ended up creating this storyline where he's been falsely accused. That's what it's based on, and that was the inspiration for the full-length play. I did spend quite a bit of time researching, and I watched some documentaries on the Old West. I had certain sources that were inspirational to me, like, for example, I love Mark Twain. He has written a lot of books that take place in the 1800s and give this beautiful picture of American life back then. But one of the things that I love about Mark Twain is his characterization. And he creates these characters that are larger than life and that are so fun and so humorous. And so he was one of my biggest inspirations for The Forgotten Sheriff, because I tried to create characters that were like that. For example, the characters of Willie and Betsy are really larger than life. They're a bit extreme. And an example of that is Betsy and how she's such a romantic. And then I also found some books on some short stories that took place in the Old West. And so there was one story in particular called The Nettle Bottom Ball. And it was about basically this suitor who wants to take this girl to a ball, but the girl's dad doesn't like him at all. And so that became the inspiration for the characters of Willie and Betsy and Hiram Rickaby. And I just love the characters of Willie and Betsy. They are some of my favorites in The Forgotten Sheriff. I have a great-great-grandfather named Russ Lambert, who was one of the first settlers of a town called Sumas in Washington State, right on the border of Canada. And he helped to settle the town in the 1800s, right when there was the whole gold rush period. And so he actually prospected for gold with two of his buddies, and they discovered a gold mine, and it was called the Lone Jack Mine. So the mine in The Forgotten Sheriff is named after the mine that my great-great-grandfather helped to find. And then I've also been inspired by some real live ghost towns. There's a town called Bodie in California. It's not too far from Yosemite, and it's basically this decrepit town that was almost frozen in time. and it's up in the mountains, and you can go up there and you can see all of these houses and buildings that were basically left by the townspeople. And it's just this amazing western town. And so I also got some of my inspiration for Nancy Glow from the town of Bodie in California. I was inspired a lot by the music that was written during the time. I would have liked The Forgotten Sheriff to have been a musical. And I actually had all these songs picked out. But it didn't end up being very practical to have it being a musical. So a lot of those songs were taken out in one way, but in another way, they were left in, because a lot of the characters will sing, and there's the one song where Willie goes to court Betsy and Hiram Rickaby gets so mad at him, and he goes to serenade Betsy, and he sings little bits and pieces of all these different songs. And that provided inspiration for different aspects of their characters. Stephen Foster, he was a great composer during that period, and Willie sings a little bit of Beautiful Dreamer. And there were all sorts of great songs. I would love to make it into a musical someday. That might happen someday, we'll see. The Forgotten Sheriff is all about a sheriff. It sounds very simple, but it's about a sheriff who was forgotten, but more specifically, a sheriff who has been falsely accused. And he has to clear his name during the story, because he's basically an innocent man who has been accused of something that he didn't do. And then I also bring in some side characters. The sheriff has a younger brother named Willie, who is in love with a girl named Betsy, and then there's also a great character called Ma Nettleton, who's basically a woman with 7 daughters who's moving from the east to the west to provide wives for all the lonely men out west. When you're writing a play, there are certain literary devices that you want to follow, and obviously you want the ending to be a high point and for there to be suspense. And so that's why there's the gunfight at the end and things like that. The sheriff is always meant to be a good guy, even in the audience's mind. I didn't really want there to ever be any doubt, I guess, that he was a good guy and that he was falsely accused. I want the audience to sympathize with him and root for him from the very beginning. There's some other characters, though, in The Forgotten Sheriff that are a little bit more shady, and you're not sure if they're good guys or bad guys. There are 2 love stories in The Forgotten Sheriff. One is between the sheriff, Theodore Rowland, and Jenny Nettleton, and then the other is between Willie and Betsy. As I was doing research, I read a lot about the Civil War. I read different letters that were written during the Civil War and different poems, and some of those inspired aspects of The Forgotten Sheriff. And the Civil War was going on simultaneously, and in some ways it didn't affect the West because the West was so far away and there weren't a lot of battles that were fought in the West. But at the same time, you had people who were affected by the Civil War who then moved out west. And Jenny Nettleton is one of those people, where she was engaged to a soldier who was killed in the Civil War. She came out west with a broken heart, and then she found Theodore Rowland, who helped to mend that heart. The Forgotten Sheriff has been done multiple times. It's one of my favorites, and then I think for whatever reason, a lot of the audiences just really like it. I think it's just lighthearted and it's got a lot of humor. So it was done initially for a summer camp, and then it has been done at least 3 times since then. It is always a privilege to see my plays being performed and come to life. And it's something that I've learned to enjoy more and more over the years. My first play that I ever wrote and that was performed, it was actually performed when I was 16, so I was pretty young. And when I first started writing plays, I would kind of see it like a movie in my mind. I would see exactly how the characters were, and I knew just what I wanted them to do and how I wanted them to say things. And over time, I've learned to let that go a lot more and enjoy more seeing what the different actors and actresses will bring to it that I didn't even imagine. So a play isn't completed until you have all the other people involved, the actors and actresses, the stage hands, the director, all the people like that. So drama really is a team sport, a team activity, and I've learned to absolutely love that about drama. And so that's one of the things that I like most about being a playwright. I don't know if I could say that I have a favorite play, but The Forgotten Sheriff is one of my favorites. I just love it, maybe because of the humor and just how it's come together over the years. One of the best ways to judge an audience response is to actually be in the audience yourself and to see how people react. And since The Forgotten Sheriff is a comedy, if people laugh, you know that they're enjoying it. And so I've gotten good feedback in that sense. People just laugh at it. And then I enjoy it too. I laugh a lot too. So I think that's one way I've gotten really positive feedback. And then also people have told me that they just really love The Forgotten Sheriff and they want to do it again. So I've had cast members tell me that, audience members tell me that. So I think people like it. It's a lot of fun. There are a lot of really fun, humorous characters. There's also some action and some dancing and a few mysteries and a lot of interesting stories and twists. And I think it would be great for people to come and see it.